Hello, my name is Adriana, and today I will be doing a book review of The Eye of God by James Rollins. This is the 9th installment of the Sigma Force series. I'm not going to do the whole spiel again. I've done it so many times. Scientists with guns. It's a long-going series. It's my favorite series. It's very good. Let's jump into the synopsis of this specific installment of my favorite series. And spoiler alert, this might be my favorite book from my favorite series. So pay attention to this one. The launch of a high-tech satellite for the detection of dark energy goes wrong, and as it decays from its orbit, its camera captures a hellacious image of the eastern seaboard. Upon further analysis, it seems this picture was a glimpse of 4 days into the future. On the other side of the world, a Vatican archivist receives a mysterious artifact from an old friend that seems to point to a doomsday matching that of the camera image. Sigma Force will have to reconcile this scientific prediction with this ancient mystery to keep the world from falling into cataclysm. Classic Sigma Force nonsense. Cutting edge technology, ancient mystery. How does it relate? How does it come together? How does our Sigma Force team bring it all home to save the entire world? Can you tell I just love these books? So a big part of why I really love this series are the characters, and this book has almost the entire gang. Like, we have basically every reoccurring character in this book, with the exception, as far as I can remember off the top of my head, with the exception of Lisa, Painter's girlfriend, and Tucker and Kane, the military dog handler and his dog. But Tucker and Kane were in the last book. Lisa, she's like kind of a civilian, so like she doesn't really fit in well to a lot of these books unless there's something like medically related going on, because she is a doctor, like a research scientist type medical doctor. Anyway, getting into the characters we do have in this story. Starting off with Gray and Seishan, who are finally done with their on-again, off-again, whatever situationship, and are going full steam ahead into On. It's just such a fun chapter of their relationship because they're still kind of in this kind of like bantery, bickery, enemies to lovers kind of thing, but like there's no longer that question hanging in the air of are they together or not, because like they decide in this book they are together, but it's still just kind of like fun and flirty, just a good time. So like we get the catharsis of them finally coming together, but we still get like the fun elements of them still being just one step back, I guess would be a good way to describe it. But going into them in this book individually, Gray he's not really doing a whole lot of deep stuff in this book. I mean, like, he is the main character. He's doing all the pattern recognition, putting all the pieces together, doing his little like puzzle master thing. But as far as like character growth, he is taking a bit of a backseat, and Seishan is definitely the main character of character growth in this book. So in the last book, she got some answers as to her family and where she came from. We take that one step further in this book and having her actually meet her mother, and I think it was just handled so well in a way that like made so much sense for the characters, and I just really liked it. And I like the growth Seishan shows in this book, and I like the trajectory of where this book is sending my favorite character of my favorite series. And it just makes me sad when I think about where it ends. Or I guess not where it ends, but where it currently stands in the series. I just wish I could kind of cement myself in this phase of the series. But that's not what we're not here to talk about the future. We're here to talk about this book and why I love it and why it's so much fun. Both Seishan and her mom had to do a lot to survive, so bringing these kind of like street cats together and like seeing how they interact as like mother and daughter, but also people who have had to really fight to survive, is just such an interesting concept, and I think handled really well in a way that's like really interesting, and there's a lot of like meat to grab on there. So I really did enjoy their relationship, getting to bring them together, see what happens, see how they interact, and their internal monologues about the whole situation. Our other kind of spy guys we have going on, Kowalski and Monk, are just kind of like doing their side character thing. Like, I don't even think Monk's hand doesn't even blow up in this book, which is wild. I think this is the first book that Monk's hand does not blow up. That's crazy. Like every other book it does. I'm pretty sure it doesn't happen in this book, which is just wild to me. I may have to do another reread to double check. but like crazy. So like I said, we get a lot of our reoccurring characters. Two of those are Rachel and Vigor, our Italian contingent of non-Sigma Force reoccurring characters. So Vigor is a Vatican archivist and also kind of involved in like this kind of Vatican CIA kind of force, like not really like a police force, but kind of more of like a spy operations something. I don't know. Mostly an archivist, but does get roped into Sigma Force things and is, you know, good friends with the Sigma Force people, so we'll rope them into things. And then Rachel is his niece, and she is, you know, I saw their cars everywhere in Italy, and I still don't know how to pronounce this word, but it starts with a C and it's spelled like this. And they are basically like a special police force for art. So they are there to guard museums, and if somebody does like an art heist, they're the ones who are like primarily investigating that. So they are very involved in like the Italian art scene because that is such a big part of like Italian culture. So yeah, she has been roped up into a couple of like Sigma Force things through her uncle or through her own investigations of like things going on, and she gets roped into this one as well because of what I said in the synopsis and her uncle getting that weird artifact. And he's like, I'm gonna go investigate this. And she's like, you're really old. I'm gonna go with you to like help you out. In this book, we also get a lot of like Painter not just being like a director, but like actively engaged in the plot. That sounds bad. Like normally he is just kind of like a logistics guy. Like he's the guy at headquarters that everybody is like reporting into. He's making sure information is like disseminating the way it's supposed to. But in this book, like he is a part of the development of the satellite and the dark energy sensor. So he is actually there when the camera like takes that picture that shows the eastern seaboard on fire. Because he is like this in-depth involved in the science part, we do get to kind of see him help put the pieces together as we go through the story, which is really fun because first book where he was like the main spy guy and then him taking a step back and like doing directory things, we just don't get to see him as involved as we have in the past. So it's fun to see him come in and like do things. So speaking of him, you know, like being involved, I think it's a good segue into our new characters that were introduced in this book. One specifically for this book only, and then another one that I think might be in the next couple, but I just can't remember because my memory's not that good. But the first one that is just for this book individually is Dr. Jada Shaw. She is the PhD, I want to say student, but I think she's done with school, which is just wild to me because she's only 23. But anyways, she is a scientist that helped put together, I guess, more of the theory part of this satellite. So she did some science about dark energy and help develop this sensor / camera to measure and read dark energy patterns. What is dark energy? I'm not your girly to describe it, but it has something to do with spatial gravitivity. So like the way gravity and space interact. Fabric of space-time. Sci-fi words. Like, I will get into this in a later section, but this is definitely the book that blends into sci-fi the most. But anyways, she's super awesome. I really like her as a character. I like the way everybody else interacts with her. I like the fact that she is this like obviously like super intelligent, very capable woman, but like is not a spy. So like she's not here to like try to shoot up the bad guys, but if she's got to scrap, she will scrap. But she's not very good at it because she's just a regular person. So I really like the way her character was handled. She like, I wish she had been aged up a little bit because 23 just seems excessive. If we could have like aged her up to like 27, I think it would have been like just as impressive, especially for how like in-depth her knowledge is. Like at 23, most people are just graduating with their bachelor's. Like at 23, you just started your PhD program. So the fact that she like is done, did she start school early? I don't know. I just don't really think we need this whole like Wunderkind thing. But whatever, I digress. I still really like her as a character. Just in my mind, I envision her a little bit older. And then the new spy guy, Sigma Force recruit we have is Duncan. He is like a electrical engineering kind of guy, served some tours in the Middle East, and is like really into biohacking. So he has like these little magnets in his fingers that help him like read magnetic waves. That comes into play a lot with the story and the science and history mysteries we've got going on. He has bioluminescent tattoos. Like he is, you know, super smart, very capable, has a bit of like a gloomy backstory sort of situation. I like him. I do hope he returns. Like I think he returns in like the next couple books, but I just can't remember. I like him. He was cool. Here we are. And then finishing up our character section with the bad guys. My favorite part of a James Rowlands novel is always the bad guys. He does such great villains, and this book is no different. We have two kind of main bad guys that we are interacting with. One is a Portuguese Chinese gangster out of Macau. He's a big wife guy. He's running the city, the gambling city of Macau. He's kind of more of like a, not a mercenary, but just like a guy who will do anything for money. And the guy who is paying this guy who will do anything for money is a North Korean scientist who is a big old sadist. Loves to torture people. So between these two, we've got a weird kind of dynamic because this like gangster guy is much more like capable and cunning and smart than our North Korean scientist, who is more of just like kind of, I don't even want to say bull in a china shop, because like physically not very intimidating, but is such a psychopath that like very intimidating. So it's just a very interesting power dynamic of like this guy paying this guy, but this guy is much more intimidating. I don't know. It's fun. They're fun. It's a good time. So I think going from characters, we're just gonna like step into just general vibes of the book. And that's gonna include some plot things, some settings things, some philosophy things, like characters, very much its standalone section. This is pretty much everything else. So this book specifically feels much more episodic than the last one. So I think I said in my review of Bloodline that that one was like the most like series-y. It definitely felt like we were getting much more overarching plot as far as how things are interacting with the guild, Seishan's past, Gray's issues with his family, like getting a lot more series things. And this one, much more episodic, much more self-contained story, which I don't think is like a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing. But I think it does allow us to focus a lot more energy on our like science and history stuff we have going on. So I will dig into those a little bit more now. So I've mentioned it a couple times throughout, but our science thing we're specifically looking at is dark energy and how it interacts with gravitational pulls and like all of this other stuff. So this satellite, as it's like traveling through space and like reading this dark energy and interacting with it, gets some kind of like quantum entanglement stuff going on, and actually sets off like kind of a chain reaction of stuff that ends up leading to a big old comet that could collide with the Earth and cause this catastrophic doomsday. So that's kind of where our science is coming into play. So very much like quantum mechanics, like dark energy. I was going to do a little bit more research on that before I started this video, but I did not. And anyway, I'm not a scientist. I enjoy a little bit of quantum mechanics here and there, but I mean, anybody who's telling you they understand quantum mechanics is lying. But like, I especially do not understand quantum mechanics. So I am not the person to tell you if this science is bunk or not, but I would imagine the way it is portrayed in this book is probably not as accurate as it could be, just due to the nature of how science works and how we learn more as time goes on. But something I really, really liked about this book is James Rollins really takes his own kind of philosophical spin to some of what could result of the realities of quantum mechanics. So something he talks about a lot and is like kind of a interesting thought experiment of quantum mechanics is like something that Schrodinger's cat, the thought experiment brought to light, is that things stay in quantum superposition until they are physically observed. So like the whole thing about Schrodinger's cat is that there's like a little vial of poison in there, and it is set to release as soon as some radioactive element decays. So as soon as that decays to a certain point, the poison will be released and the cat will be dead. But until you actually open up the box to see whether or not that decay has happened, the cat is both alive and dead. And then once you open the box, then you see it's either A or B. Like it's not both anymore. But something that James Rollins brings up is that, you know, if there is like a multiverse, something that would cause these multiverses to happen is that in one universe, the cat is alive, and in the other universe, the cat is dead. And following through that philosophy, the universe where the cat is dead or a person is dead, their consciousness could be kind of like airlifted from that life and placed into the life that they are still alive, making that person a more person, like bringing in more of the life experience from the other universes. So just like the longer you live, the more of these kind of consciousness you take on from these other universes that you had been living in, and the more kind of complete person you become, which is just like a really interesting kind of afterlife thought, I guess, really blending kind of that religion and science and what that could all mean, bringing it together. I liked that. I thought it was a really interesting philosophical take to have on a very complex quantum physics mechanic. The history portion we have is very much tied to Genghis Khan and his conquering of the Mongolian Empire. I think there is a map in here showing like the Mongolian Empire at the start of Genghis Khan's life and where it ended after he died, and it is like insane, like the amount of geography that man conquered. Wild, wild, wild. And so where we get some of his like involvement is that one of the saints, I'm struggling now, some disciple of Jesus went out like into the far west. You know what? We're just gonna look it up. Saint Thomas. So I think right now it is generally accepted that Saint Thomas traveled out to China to bring Christianity to China. But what James Rollins posits in this one is that St. Thomas actually made it all the way out to Mongolia and like helped spread Christianity among there, giving Genghis Khan a decent respect of Christianity, enough to the point where when he went to go invade Rome, the Pope gave him this like scary artifact that said, hey, if you invade Rome, it's gonna like fuck you up. And so he took that and decided not to invade Rome and kind of included that in his philosophy going forward. And so Genghis Khan was kind of aware of this like doomsday prophecy, and so they have to like go through and find his tomb, which I think to this day we don't really know where Genghis Khan's tomb is. So it's still kind of a fun mystery to like include in the book. Continuing on with vibes, this book makes Mongolia seem tight as hell, and I really want to go. Like it just like the way he describes like the mountainous areas, and they're like trekking through to like alpine lakes, and like it just seems really, really cool, and I want to experience that as well. And then finally, I think I'm gonna end this vibe section with just like a little bit of spoilers to really dig into why I think this is the most sci-fi we've gotten with these books. I've listened to James Rollins in a couple interviews, and then he even talked about it when I went down to go to that signing in Phoenix, but he kind of thinks as a lot of his books are more on the sci-fi side, and I definitely agree, and I think this one really exemplifies that with the ending. Again, this book was very much focused on like quantum mechanics and how a choice can like split the universe into two different multiverses. So at the end of this book, a coin flip actually decides that Rachel is gonna get shot in the head. And she does. And the very last chapter is showing like a multiverse where that coin flip went differently and she did not get shot in the head. And she actually lives. And in this multiverse, we also see that her uncle did not have the terminal cancer that he was struggling with throughout this entire book. And that becomes the multiverse we end up following for the rest of the series. So it's just like wild that like all of a sudden we're just like pretty full sci-fi concept in this not necessarily grounded contemporary action thriller, but like, I don't know. Like I said, this is getting very, very sci-fi and I like it. I love a sci-fi. I love like a light sci-fi or light fantasy element in an otherwise grounded-ish book. Big old fan of that. I obviously gave this book 5 stars. It's so fun. It's so good. I love it immensely. This is my favorite installment. Unless I read another one between now. Because, like, I remember Crucible pretty well, and I know that's not my favorite. Or anything Crucible and on are my favorite. So there's not that many between this and Crucible. So this might be solidly my favorite. But we'll see. Right now, definitely fave. So with that, thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.